What lies beneath the sands of time? From mysterious artifacts to puzzling structures, ancient archaeological discoveries continue to baffle scientists and, of course, ignite our imaginations. In today's video, we'll explore the most perplexing finds that still defy explanation, including one of the most famous of all, the secrets hidden within King Tut's tomb. Discovered in 1922 by the legendary Howard Carter, King Tut's tomb is easily one of the most famous archaeological finds in history. Gotta kick our list off with them. Even though it was smaller than other royal tombs at the time, sure, it was a little small, it was surprisingly untouched by grave robbers, which is pretty rare in ancient Egypt considering how much time has passed. Inside, Carter uncovered more than 5,000 treasures, including the iconic golden mask. Now, what makes this tomb so mysterious is how well preserved it was when they found it. Considering Tut's short reign and his young age, this was honestly baffling. His sudden passing and the rapid burial have sparked endless theories, leaving many aspects of his life and legacy shrouded in mystery. Number 9. Karnak stones. The impressively large collection of megalithic stones that cover the area of Karnak in France have boggled the minds of researchers for years. They're also sometimes referred to as France's Stonehenge. Not a bad title, although they are very different. The Karnak stones are a collection of 3,000 stones, which were all cut from the same rock, and they were put in place somewhere around 500 BC. Now, what confused a lot of researchers was the fact that even though these stones show alignments, dolmens, and other examples of ancient geography consistent with other sites, they really shouldn't have existed in that time period in which they were constructed. Makes no sense. Also, sounds exhausting. Scientists have been trying to decode the arrangement of the stones for years, trying to figure out what it all means, but still, they have no clue. Number 8. Drum Castle. Ancient chambers? Alright, let's do this. Back in 2013, while a conservation team was working on Scotland's oldest castle, Drum Castle, they found a previously undiscovered part of the castle. It was a hidden chamber, left untouched for hundreds of years. Dr. Jonathan Clark from FAS Heritage, part of the archaeological team, he recalls window openings on the first floor level, but once he was inside the castle, wherever those rooms were, they were hidden behind bookshelves. They couldn't find them. So they unblocked the windows, took a peek in, and found a hidden medieval chamber. And also, it's important to add, it was in great condition. They hid this thing well. It even had a little toilet in there too. How cozy is that? To quote Dr. Clark himself, he says, "This adds greatly to our knowledge of how the interior of the Tower of Drum was used in the medieval period. In due course, it should contribute a greater knowledge of how 14th century towers were used in their heyday." Yeah, hidden chambers, a hidden toilet. Is this haunted? What do we think? Comment down below. Number 7, the first zoo. Long before the pyramids were even built, Egyptians were getting pretty creative, if you want to call it that. They were the first to see a petting zoo. How brave is that also? Yeah, let's just start touching animals and see what happens. Why not? 6,000 years ago, Heracleopolis was the capital of Upper Egypt during the pre-dynastic period. It was beautiful. Sitting alongside the Nile River, it was clean, everything was untouched, it was beautiful. In those days, perhaps the best way to flaunt your wealth was by getting an exotic pet. There were excavations done back in the late 19th century by English archaeologists James Quibble and Frederick Green. They were the ones who discovered that this town was thriving with over 10,000 residents. But when further studies were performed, they also found the remains of an elephant surrounded in cosmetics, with ivory bracelets and amethyst beads. Really a lovely burial. Cats and dogs were also found, common pets. There's also crocodiles, again, brave owners there. Hippos, leopards, wild ox, all in the same area, and they were all carefully buried. But the broken bones suggest a bit of a cruel history there. Number 6, the Sphinx's hidden chambers. The Great Sphinx of Giza, with its lion's body and its human head, it's kind of hard to miss. It's one of the most iconic symbols of ancient Egypt. However, its purpose, its origins, and secrets are still hotly debated. Ancient texts and local legends speak of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx's massive paws, possibly, hopefully, containing treasure, sacred texts, or even lost knowledge from a forgotten civilization. Now, despite modern exploration using advanced technology like ground-penetrating radar, these chambers still remain a mystery. No one knows what's inside. Some researchers believe the Sphinx predates the pyramids by thousands of years, pointing to an earlier, even more advanced civilization that might have left behind clues about humanity's distant past. So it's kind of important if we open this one up. Was the Sphinx a guardian, a spiritual symbol, or was it a marker for something far more significant? Number 5. Fiddler's Theater. Excavations in Rome revealed the remains of a Theater Neroni, a private theater used by none other than Emperor Nero himself, previously known only through texts. Now, this discovery provides a physical context to these historical accounts of Nero's reign. I thought Nero was a brat when he made a palace for his horse, but his own private theater? Imagine doing an entire show for one person. How awkward is that? Although I am doing that right now with producer Chris. It's not that awkward, it's kind of fun, it's nice. Number 4, Israel Tomb. Looking back to the Dark Ages in Shamir Heights, northern Israel, this tomb is massive. It's made up of 400 tons of boulders and it stretches 65 feet wide. This burial chamber goes back 4,000 years. Now, it could mean that humans were part of an organized society that long ago, especially considering the art that they found on the ceiling inside said dolmen, but this is the first time that art has been documented in one of these chambers in the Middle East. That's why it's so important, and we haven't quite figured out what the ceiling carvings depict yet. So far we think arrows or anchors, but inside the actual grave there were 3 sets of human remains, so it had been used for quite a while. While excavating the ancient gravesite, archaeologists also found colored beads. Yeah, we got beads and bones. Come on in, welcome to my tomb. One of the most intriguing parts of this grave has to be the lines carved in the ceilings. All the lines connecting to one single arc. What does that mean? I'm good at video games, I want to figure this out. Number 3, the Tomb of Ai. Unearthed by the legendary Howard Carter, classic, he's just digging up everyone. Back in 1907, the tomb of A, the pharaoh who took the throne after King Tut, rests in the Valley of the Kings. Now, the real intrigue surrounding A's tomb comes from his rapid rise to power, which is still tied to the controversial circumstances of King Tut's passing. Was Ai involved in his passing at such a young age, or was he simply a pawn in this larger royal drama? That's what we hope to figure it out every time we dig one of these guys up. Now, the tomb itself is filled with stunning artifacts, hinting at his considerable influence, yet the mystery deepens when you look at his short reign and the near silence in historical records about his burial and about his royal connections. Why is his legacy so vague? Was he truly a legitimate ruler, or was his rise to power more complicated than we know? These unanswered questions keep A's tomb and his role in history covered in mystery. Number 2, oldest inscription mentioning Odin. In Denmark, a remarkable archaeological find was made with the discovery of a golden disc from the 5th century. It was part of the Vindeliv hoard. Now, this disc contains the oldest known inscription of the name of the Norse god Odin. You know, Thor's dad, Anthony Hopkins, that guy? Previously, the earliest evidence of Odin worship was dated 150 years later, making this discovery significant for understanding this pre-Viking spiritual landscape in Scandinavia. Number 1, Göbekli Tepe. This monument is not only mysterious because we don't know much about its origins or anything at all, but it also caused quite the headache for researchers because it completely rewrote the timeline of the Neolithic era. Yeah, whoops, we missed one. We missed a big one, actually. The Neolithic era was the final period of the Stone Age where early humans began the process of domestication of animals in agriculture, right? It's when we kind of upped our game. For years, researchers believed that this era is what brought people towards the process of holding rituals and creating monuments to their beliefs. However, upon discovering Göbekli Tepe, that idea was completely erased. Now this mysterious site suggests that it was the work of early hunter-gatherers that made this temple a ritualistic center. So this would have happened far before these individuals decided to create settlements and begin the agricultural revolution. So based on that timeline of human settlements and such, this makes no sense. Why did they do this? Why did they make this? Based on evidence found at this site, that mind you is 6,000 some odd years older than Stonehenge, groups of hunter-gatherers came to the site in Urfa, Turkey, around 11,500 years ago and carved out a ritualistic site out of limestone that covered the entire area. So it's believed that Göbekli Tepe was just designed as a stopping point for these early humans. It was a place to meet, hold feasts, and then, of course, depart. Now, soon enough, the desire to regularly hold these gatherings prompted the early humans to domesticate plants and animals to have a more dependable food source. So with that in mind, it's believed that these rituals are what gave way to agricultural revolution. and not the other way around. Yeah, they were the OGs. Imagine inventing agriculture. Hey, I have an idea.
How wild does this look? This is the skeleton of a prehistoric man that's grown into the cave where he died. Gnarly. He was later dubbed the Altamura Man, but who was he? Well, the Altamura Man is actually the most complete Neanderthal fossil ever discovered. In 1993, cave explorers came across the bones in the Lamalunga cave near Altamura, Italy. They found an upside-down human skull embedded in rock, along with many other bones. The skull was covered in shiny mineral deposits known as coralloid. This gave them some indication of how old the remains were. Scientists believe the Altamura Man fell into a sinkhole and got trapped. Obviously, he never managed to escape. Over time, calcium deposits in cave formations sealed his body, turning it into a kind of natural tomb. Researchers eventually concluded that the remains were about 130,000 to 172,000 years old, making this one of the oldest Neanderthal fossils ever found. Two Dutch artists, Adrie and Alphonse Kennis, reconstructed what the Altamura Man likely looked like, which was probably something like this. Jamestown, established in 1607, was England's first permanent settlement in North America. From the start, things weren't easy. The colonists battled harsh conditions, disease, and food shortages. One of the darkest periods was the winter of 1609 to 1610, known as the Starving Time. During this season, many settlers couldn't find enough food, and about 75% of them died. To survive, those who lived resorted to eating whatever they could, including each other. Now, there have been all kinds of creepy and bizarre things discovered at this site over the years, but one of the most grim was in 2012, when archaeologists came across the bones of a young girl. The bones were covered in marks that had clearly been left by blades, as if she'd been cut up and eaten like a steak. And a series of other human remains were found in a kitchen cellar, mixed in with various animal bones, most dated back to the Starving Time, so it was highly likely these poor folks had been eaten. Well, these folks look comfy, don't they? These are called fire mummies, human remains stored in a very specific way, a way that actually does make a lot of sense for saving space, but sounds pretty gruesome when described. The fire mummies of the Philippines, or the Kabayan mummies, are found in the mountain slopes of Kabayan in the northern Philippines, dating back as far as 2000 BCE. The mummies were created by the Ibaloy people, who would store them in caves. As for the mummification process, it would actually start while the person was still alive. Now, this wasn't a punishment kind of thing or anything like that. It would be done when someone was right on the verge of death. They'd drink a very salty beverage to prepare their body. After death, the body would be washed and positioned upright over a fire to dry out all the fluids. To further preserve the body, smoke from tobacco would be blown into the mouth to dry out the internal organs, and various herbs would be rubbed into the skin. Finally, the mummy would be crammed into a small pinewood coffin and laid to rest. It may seem kind of creepy to many of us today, imagining being crunched up in this position in death, but again, it is great for storage. You don't usually think of gladiator bones being found anywhere outside of Rome, but in 2010 an entire gladiator grave was unearthed in Britain. Excavations led by the York Archaeological Trust in 2010 uncovered 80 skeletons dating back to the 1st to 4th century CE. Most of these remains were male, robust, and taller than average. Most disturbingly, a lot of the men had their heads separated from their bodies, either having them placed in their hands or between their knees. Pretty gruesome. But it appeared as if they'd been buried with respect. Forensic analysis revealed bite marks on one skeleton, which had probably been made by a lion, tiger, or bear, another clue they'd been gladiators fighting in an arena with wild animals. A lot of the skeletons also had one arm significantly stronger than the other, a sign of intense weapons training from a very young age. The findings came from the Driffield Terrace site, where excavation had began in 2004. Dr. Michael Wysocki from the University of Central Lancashire stated, "These are internationally important discoveries. We don't have any other potential gladiator cemeteries with this level of preservation anywhere else in the world." Look at this poor fella. In 2014, archaeologists in Bulgaria found these remains at a 13th century Thracian site, the remains of a man who had been staked as a vampire. The skeleton belonged to a man who was likely in his 40s at the time, and an iron rod had been driven through his chest to prevent him from rising from the dead. His left leg had also been removed and placed beside his body, just to make sure he wouldn't be able to walk around if he did manage to de-stake himself. During the period these bones were dated, many Eastern European cultures believed that vampires were a very real danger, particularly when it was someone who died under what was deemed an unusual circumstance. So to protect the living, communities would stake bodies to make sure they wouldn't come back. This isn't the only corpse found to have been a so-called vampire burial. Far from it. Remains have been found across Bulgaria and other parts of Europe. At a site in Poland, archaeologists found remains of people buried with a sickle placed over their throat so that they rose from the dead, they'd lob off their own heads as they sat up. And there's something very cartoony, very Looney Tunesy about that method, in a definitely more grim, macabre sort of way. In 2012, in the small village of Bergheim, France, archaeologists found an ancient pit filled with human bones, specifically arms, hands, and fingers. This pit, known as Pit 157, is about 5 feet wide and 6.5 feet deep, and it dates back nearly 6,000 years. The excavation began when an archaeological company was conducting surveys ahead of construction work in the area. While exploring a 5-acre site filled with ancient storage pits called silos, they discovered a total of 60 silos, 14 of which contained human bones. Pit 157 stood out because it was nearly filled with human remains, unlike the others, which were mostly empty or had different types of artifacts. The bones found in the pit included at least 7 upper limbs from different people. Shortly after these limbs were discarded, the bodies of 7 other individuals were also thrown into the pit. As for exactly what happened here, that's a mystery. Who killed these people? Why were their arms removed? Unfortunately, the answers to those questions have been lost to time. Not only was the Krakatoa volcano eruption of 1883 incredibly deadly, it also produced the loudest sound ever heard by human ears. People 3,000 miles away described it sounding like cannon fire. Here's a piece of audio recording of what it likely would have sounded like, not that we can mimic the actual intensity. The eruption began on May 20th and continued until October 21st. The most catastrophic moment, though, came on August 27th, when over 70% of the island and surrounding areas were obliterated. The eruption claimed at least 36,417 lives, mostly due to the tsunamis that it triggered. The explosive force was so great that it caused waves up to 120 feet high, devastating coastal towns and changing some landscapes permanently. The consequences extended far beyond Indonesia. The ash cloud affected weather patterns worldwide. The creepiest part, though, are the stories that surfaced in the months and years following this eruption. Large fields of pumice, a lightweight volcanic rock, floated across the Indian Ocean, and many of these pumice rafts carried human skeletons. One story goes that in July of 1884, students at a mission school in Zanzibar playing at the beach discovered black volcanic stones washing ashore. As they went to get a closer look, they were horrified to find human bones mixed in among the stones. Turned out skeletons had been washing up along the southeastern coast of Africa for almost a year after the eruption. In 2016, archaeologists excavating an ancient Greek cemetery discovered the remains of at least 80 skeletons found in a mass grave. These skeletons date back to between the 8th and 5th century BCE and were shackled by iron cuffs around their wrists. It looked like they'd been victims of a mass execution. The site is part of the Phaleron Delta Necropolis, an ancient burial ground that was uncovered during construction for a new National Opera House and library in downtown Athens. The head of the excavation stated at the time that they were, quote, executed, all in the same manner, but that they were buried with respect. So the question is, who were these folks? Why were they taken out, and why were they buried with such care? Most of the skeletons belonged to very young people who appeared to be in good health at the time of their deaths as well. Is this a death metal album cover, or is this an actual archaeological find? Well, you clicked the video, you know the answer. Yes, this is a real wall of human skulls constructed by the ancient Aztecs. Archaeologists from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History came across a tower filled with 119 human skulls while restoring a building on the site of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. This tower is believed to be one of the 7 that once stood in this ancient city, located near the ruins of the Templo Mayor, a religious center dedicated to the Aztec gods of war and rain. Researchers first thought the skulls belonged mainly to defeated male warriors, but more recent analysis revealed that some of these skulls belonged to women and youths as well. Archaeologist Barrera Rodriguez said that while some of the skulls may have belonged to warriors, others could have been from people used in sacrificial ceremonies. In Aztec culture, human sacrifices were viewed as necessary acts to sustain the gods and, by extension, protect the universe itself. Rukpind Lake in the Himalayas of India has a pretty ominous nickname. It's often referred to as Skeleton Lake, and that's because, for a brief period during the summer, the frozen surface of the lake melts, revealing hundreds of human skeletons lying at the bottom. The skeletons were first reported in the 19th century, but gained more attention when a game reserve ranger came across the remains again in 1942. At the time, the belief was that the skeletons belonged to Japanese soldiers, but it turned out the remains were much older. In 2004, it was discovered that these bones dated back to around 850 CE and belonged to 2 distinct groups of people. Most likely they were killed by a severe hailstorm, as analysis showed that a lot of them had suffered blunt force trauma to their upper bodies. We've talked about an incredible discovery archaeologist Kathleen Martinez made a couple years back, the possible location of Cleopatra's tomb. Well, I have an update on this, but before we get into that, here's a recap. Kathleen Martinez has been searching for Cleopatra's tomb since 2005, and in 2022 she started getting onto something big. She believed she may have finally discovered the tunnel that leads to it. The tunnel was found beneath the temple ruins of Taposiris Magna, a site built around 280 BCE that's dedicated to the gods Osiris and Isis. The tunnel sits about 42.5 feet underground, carved into the sandstone, but parts of this tunnel have been submerged in water, of course making it a bit more of a challenge to explore. At Taposiris Magna, the archaeological team has already uncovered some fascinating artifacts, sculptures of Isis, coins featuring Cleopatra and Alexander the Great, and even an entire burial ground filled with mummies. But the next step was for the team to, of course, investigate the nearby Mediterranean Sea, where part of the tunnel is submerged. But let's get on to this update. Martinez needed permission from the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities to carry out the next step of her investigation, but she needed a specific artifact to back up her theory that this temple was dedicated to the goddess Isis, a goddess Cleopatra famously claimed to be the reincarnation of. The item she was looking for is called a foundation plate, inscribed with important details about when and why the temple was built. Archaeological missions had been searching for this plate since the 1800s, but they all came up empty-handed. That is until Dr. Martinez. She found the foundation plate she was looking for, which reads, "The king of high and low Egypt, Ptolemy V lives forever, beloved by Isis." This plate finally proved that the temple was indeed dedicated to the goddess. Now, to help with her underwater search, she reached out to Robert Ballard, the diver who found the Titanic, and now with the support from the Egyptian government, her expedition was a go. During their exploration in submerged Alexandria, the team found structures standing 3 meters tall, and they did not look like natural formations. They also uncovered basalt, the same material used in statues from the first temple, confirming these structures were made by humans. More than 5 other points of interest were also identified and are set to be excavated in the next permit season, some even 10 kilometers out from the coast. Dr. Martinez is convinced that if Alexandria is underwater, then Cleopatra's temple may be as well. There will definitely be more updates to come. The Valley of the Golden Mummies is an amazing burial site found in Egypt's western desert. It dates back to the Greco-Roman period and was discovered in 1996 by archaeologist Zahi Hawass and his team. They uncovered around 250 mummies over several seasons, but Hawass later estimated that there could be more than 10,000 mummies buried in this area. When the team first found these mummies, many were in surprisingly good condition too. They had a variety of decorating styles, but the researchers identified 4 main ones. The first style featured a gilded mask covering the face, along with a gilded waistcoat that depicted different gods and goddesses. About 60 of the mummies were adorned like this. The second style was covered with courtenage, which is a type of material made from layers of linen and plaster. These mummies displayed scenes of gods, including Anubis, who is known as the god of the dead. The third style didn't have any gold or fancy decorations, but was instead placed inside a pottery coffin shaped like a person, known as an anthropoid. The fourth style was simply wrapped in linen. Each mummy was buried with a number of artifacts like jewelry, pottery for food, wine jars, and coins. This next story is, it's always been one of my favorites. It sounds completely made up. It's gonna sound like the Egyptian version of the Goonies, but this is actually a real thing that happened, and yeah, I just love this news story. So the media didn't release the guy's full name. He was simply referred to as Nagy. But Nagy was digging in his backyard one day in 2015 when he stumbled on this tunnel. Now, before I even say where the tunnel leads, let me just say, finding a tunnel in your backyard would just be incredibly cool no matter what. Like, I'd be calling my friends over, we'd be getting an adventure going, I'd buy an Indiana Jones hat, whole 9 yards, but let's get to where this tunnel actually led. The tunnel, right in this guy's backyard, led to Khufu Pyramid, one of the 3 pyramids that make up the Giza Pyramid complex. It's also one of the largest and oldest. Now, how insane is that? First of all, why was he digging? Who just goes digging in their backyard? If I was digging in my backyard, I'd find some worms. Probably that would be about it. This guy randomly decides to dig one day and finds a tunnel leading to the Great Pyramid. He does live in Egypt, but still, what are the chances of this? The tunnel was about 33 feet beneath his house and is made of stone blocks. Now, he didn't go into this tunnel and make his way to the Great Pyramid and find this out for himself. That would have been way cooler, but probably not the best idea to just go into an unknown tunnel buried in your backyard. Instead, he contacted authorities and archaeologists were sent to his yard who made the discovery. And what's even crazier is that this tunnel was actually something archaeologists have been seeking out for a long time. It was written about, but had never actually been found until then. In 2011, archaeologists in the ancient capital city of Avaris discovered a series of severed hands buried in the ground. The 12 severed hands dated back to around 1500 BCE and were found in pits just outside the walls of a palace. In one pit, 8 hands were found grouped together, while the others were in a nearby pit only about 3 feet away. Interestingly, both pits would have been visible from the throne room of the palace, meaning they might have been very important trophies for the rulers. Researcher Julia Greski from the German Archaeological Institute noted that Egyptian texts mention a practice called Gold of Honor. This involved presenting the hands of slain enemies to the pharaoh in exchange for gold jewelry, like necklaces or pendants. Interestingly, there were no cut marks on these bones. They'd been removed very carefully, possibly as part of a ritual. The tendons that connected the hands to the arms were likely severed after death and after rigor mortis had passed. But why take your enemy's hands as trophies? Well, hands were very symbolically important to the ancient Egyptians, representing power and agency. On top of that, without your hands, you can't really wield a weapon, so I guess it makes sense. According to ancient Egyptian beliefs, losing a hand would prevent you from entering the afterlife as well. So considering that, hands would have been pretty significant war trophies. The catacombs of Qom el-Shokafa just look incredible. I would absolutely love to explore this place. Looks like something straight out of Zelda. They're actually considered one of these 7 wonders of the Middle Ages. It's a necropolis made up of a series of tombs, statues, and artifacts with a blend of Egyptian, Greek, and Roman influence. Discovered in 1900, a donkey accidentally fell into this shaft, and that's how this place was found. That's crazy. These catacombs date back to the 2nd century CE, during the age of the Antonine emperors. They were used as burial chambers from the 2nd to the 4th centuries. The catacombs are made up of 3 levels that were tunneled into solid rock. The 3rd level was completely underwater until more recent restorations. And inside the catacombs is a funeral banquet hall where family and friends would have gathered on stone couches during burials. The name Kam el Shokafa means mound of shards, and it comes from the many broken pottery shards found in the area. Visitors would bring food and wine to the tombs, and instead of carrying the empty jars back home, they'd break them and leave the pieces behind. When this site was discovered, heaps of these broken plates were found. Among all the fascinating finds is the Hall of Caracalla, which contains the bones of horses that were buried there for Emperor Caracalla in 215 CE. As I mentioned before, there's this blend of styles here. On the walls of the catacombs are carvings, some blending in Greek and Roman influences. For example, there are scenes depicting the Egyptian god Anubis, but dressed in Roman-style clothing. The tomb chamber features 3 massive stone sarcophagi, which are super intricate. I mean, it just looks like the type of place you could spend years exploring, and you'd always find something new to look at. The tomb of Nefertari is a beautiful burial site in Egypt's Valley of the Queens. It was discovered in 1904 by Ernesto Schiaparelli, who is the director of the Egyptian Museum in Turin. Nefertari, whose name means beautiful companion, was the favorite wife of Pharaoh Ramses II, and he made sure everyone knew it. He called her the one for whom the sun shines, and even built a temple in her honor. The paintings in the tomb reveal a lot about Nefertari's life and the Egyptian beliefs surrounding death. One famous image shows her playing a game called Senet, showing the importance of games in her culture. There's also a scene of her meeting Thoth, the god of writing, meaning she may have been literate. The wall art also shows scenes from the Book of the Dead detailing rituals and tests Nefertari would face in the afterlife. After this discovery, it became clear that the tomb had suffered from looting, unfortunately. The treasures, including Nefertari's sarcophagus and mummy, were gone, but remnants of her knees were found, oddly enough, and about 2/3 of its wall paintings still remain, fortunately. The tomb has also suffered water damage, unfortunately, and mold thanks to humidity. In 1986, there was a restoration project to preserve the paintings, and it was completed in 1992. Thonis Heraklion was an ancient Egyptian city that ended up at the bottom of the sea. It was located near the mouth of the Nile River and was one of the most important cities in ancient Egypt at one point, a thriving port city during the time of the pharaohs, a center for trade with Greece and other Mediterranean countries, and it played a big role in the Egyptian economy. The city was known for its grand temples, the statues dedicated to various gods and goddesses. We don't know exactly why it sank, but there were likely natural disasters like earthquakes and rising sea levels, which led to it gradually sinking underwater. For centuries, Thonis was lost and forgotten until underwater archaeologists rediscovered it in 2000, with divers finding well-preserved artifacts like statues, pottery, and religious objects. This guy paraglided over the Egyptian pyramids. Take a look at this. Just earlier this month, a 35-year-old paramotor pilot named Yanis Terzis flew over some famous Egyptian landmarks, including the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Sphinx. It's incredibly breathtaking footage, and I am incredibly jealous of this man. At one point, he got up close enough to see the symbols etched onto the top. That is incredible. That's a part of the pyramids we never get to see. I didn't even know there was stuff written on the top until today. As Terzis stated, most of the paramotor pilots fly high for safety precautions. Sometimes I like to get a little bit risky on my flights and go close to the ground and over the building to get amazing shots and videos. And an amazing video he got. He also went on to say, on the pyramid flight, I had the intention of touching my foot tip over the pyramids. That was something unique that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life.
وأحب أن أؤكد أننا مستمرين في العمل
That was Ahmed Issa, the Egyptian Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, talking about a discovery that had just been made in the Great Pyramid of Giza, a hidden corridor that had been sealed off for thousands of years. Using advanced scanning technology, researchers revealed a hidden corridor that measures about 9 meters long and 2 meters wide. This corridor is located on the northern side of the pyramid, just above the main entrance, and it's sealed off, meaning it can't be accessed from the outside. It's believed to date back about 4,500 years. The discovery was announced by Ahmed Issa and the famous Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass during a ceremony held at the pyramid. The Scan Pyramids project, which uses cutting-edge scanning methods to explore unexplored areas of the pyramids, was responsible for uncovering this chamber. Experts from France, Japan, Germany, and Canada collaborated on this project using 5 non-invasive techniques to analyze the structure without disturbing it. Still waiting for an update on this story. At this point, we still don't know what was actually hidden in the corridor, if anything, and we don't really know what it was used for, but they're still looking into it. Hopefully we'll get an update soon. Just back in May, a team of researchers from Japan and Egypt uncovered what they're calling an underground anomaly while studying the area beneath the Western Cemetery of the Giza Pyramid Complex. The Western Cemetery, which is located close to the Great Pyramid, contains a bunch of mastabas, which are rectangular tombs made of limestone or mud. But one section of the cemetery has been largely untouched, a flat area without any visible structures. Curious about what might be buried there, the research team used ground-penetrating radar and electrical resuscitivity tomography, or ERT, to scan the ground. And they noticed this odd density under the surface, as if something man-made had been buried below. The researchers identified 2 distinct underground structures, one shallow and one deep. The shallow structure is L-shaped, just under 2 meters deep. The deeper structure is even more mysterious. The team is seeking to excavate the site to find out what these structures are. Who knows what they'll find down there? All I know is I am impatiently waiting. The biggest mystery about the pyramids, and really one of the biggest mysteries in the world, is how they were built. There have been some interesting theories over the years, but just back in May, scientists made a huge breakthrough. A research team from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, thinks they've found clues to a long-lost branch of the River Nile, now buried beneath desert and farmland, a river that might have played a big role in transporting material for the pyramids. For years, archaeologists have suspected that the ancient Egyptians used a nearby waterway for transporting heavy stone blocks, but they didn't really know where this river could have been. To uncover the mystery, the research team combined radar, satellite imagery, historical maps, geophysical surveys, and sediment coring to create this detailed map of the river branch. The area is thought to have been buried by a major drought and sandstorms thousands of years ago. Radar technology allowed the researchers to penetrate the sand surface and produce images of hidden features, revealing buried rivers and ancient structures near where many pyramids are located. The river branch, dubbed the Aramat branch, Aramat meaning pyramids in Arabic, was found to border 31 pyramids built between 4,700 and 3,700 years ago. This means that the river was likely used to help transport material for the pyramids. Dr. Suzanne Onstein, a co-author of the study, stated that locating the actual river branch and having the data that shows there was a waterway that could be used for the transportation of heavier blocks, equipment, people, everything, really helps us explain pyramid construction. She went on to explain that the river would have allowed the ancient Egyptians to, quote, use the river's energy to carry these heavy blocks rather than human labor. Back in September of 2023, a bunch of hidden chambers were found in an ancient Egyptian pyramid. This pyramid, built around 4,400 years ago for Pharaoh Sahur, is located in the Abusir necropolis in northern Egypt. The pyramid has been undergoing restoration since 2019 to stabilize it and clean out its interiors. And as workers were clearing away debris from a collapsed corridor, they stumbled on these hidden chambers. The spaces were likely storage rooms, which might not sound as thrilling as finding a hidden treasure, but they're important for understanding how the pyramid was designed and used. The pyramid's tunnels have been blocked since its first excavation in 1836, and now, almost 2 centuries later, researchers had access to areas that have been hidden for ages. What you're looking at here is a massive 100-ton artifact, dubbed a black box, found in a cave system about 12 miles south of the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is just one of 24, and we still don't know exactly what these thousands of year-old boxes were built for. They're made of solid Aswan granite. Again, they're incredibly heavy, and it's not even clear how these things were carved and transported. The engineering is remarkable too. These things are smooth as tabletops on the inside and outside. They also have hieroglyphics carved into them. Question has always been though, how were these incredibly heavy slabs of stone transported from rock quarries to their current location? Just another unsolved mystery of ancient Egypt. Back in 2020, archaeologists made a huge find in a necropolis south of Cairo. They uncovered dozens of ancient coffins. Khalid El-Anani, Egypt's antiquities minister at the time, said that at least 59 sealed sarcophagi were discovered, most containing mummies, buried over 2,600 years ago in 3 wells. The discovery was announced at the iconic step pyramid of Djoser in Saqqara, where the coffins were displayed. At the event, one sarcophagus was opened in front of reporters. Saqqara is home to at least 11 pyramids and a number of tombs from different eras. And these recently found coffins belong to priests, top officials, and elites. Among the finds were 28 statues of Ptah and a bronze statue of the god Nefertim, inscribed with the name of its owner, a priest named Babi Amun. Alright, this next one's actually pretty entertaining. Just a little reminder that people never really change. Recent findings reveal that ancient Egyptians had a very unique way of tracking employee time off. A limestone tablet known as an ostrakon, housed in the British Museum and dating back to 1250 BCE, gives us a glimpse into the work-life balance of ancient Egyptians. This tablet lists 40 workers and details the days they missed, along with reasons given like illness and family duties. The absences are organized by season and date. For instance, on month 4, winter day 24, a worker named Pandub missed his shift because his mother wasn't feeling well and he had to take care of her. Of course, a lot of workers took off work because they were sick or injured. One name that's listed is Hainafer, who had eye troubles. There's also Seba, who was bitten by a scorpion. And another reason for not coming into work was brewing beer. This actually shows up a number of times. Beer was a staple drink in Egypt and was actually considered a meal. Anyway, just goes to show that people struggled with their work-life balance just like we do today. Although I don't think calling into work because you're brewing beer is gonna go over very well today. What you're looking at here is Pharaoh Khufu's sarcophagus. It may not look like much, but it's actually an incredibly impressive piece of engineering. It was made from a single piece of granite weighing about 3.75 tons. It's so large that it couldn't have been brought into the burial chamber after the pyramid was completed, so it had to have been placed there during the pyramid's construction. And what makes this sarcophagus even more impressive is that it was hollowed out from the inside, and it has holes that look like they were made with some kind of drill. So the question is, how did people in ancient times with what we think were primitive tools manage to create something like this? The effort and skill needed to make Khufu's coffin, like so many other constructions from ancient Egypt, just seems very ahead of its time. In 2015, something unusual was detected at the Great Pyramid using thermal cameras. Researchers found higher temperatures in 3 stones at the bottom of the pyramid. The Egyptian Antiquities Ministry had a few possible explanations for these heat spots. You figured they could be empty spaces within the pyramid, internal air currents, or just variations in the building materials that were used. Of course, there were also fun theories that the heat was being given off by ancient technology buried deep beneath the pyramids. Experts had been actively searching for hidden chambers in the pyramids. A team of architects and scientists from Egypt, France, Canada, and Japan conducted the thermal survey using sunrise and sunset. So they took advantage of the temperature changes as the sun heated the limestone and then allowed it to cool down. The ministry found that there were these thermal anomalies during their observations. One heat spot was found on the eastern side of the Great Pyramid. The stones there showed a distinct difference in temperature compared to others, hinting at something beneath the surface. This discovery was what eventually led to the Operation Scan Pyramids project, where they found that hidden corridor in the Pyramid of Giza that I mentioned earlier. A dude stumbled on a massive ancient Roman artifact in a riverbed. It was found in the gravel of the Torre River in San Vito al Torre. Arvino Silvestri was the one who first spotted the ancient artifact and alerted archaeologists. The riverbank was excavated, and the archaeologists uncovered a massive block of carved limestone, revealing it to be an ancient Roman funeral monument, weighed in at a whopping 13,000 pounds, and it was in pretty good condition. It's so big and heavy that it required an excavator for transportation. Pretty remarkable find, and quite beautiful as well. It has an intricately carved figure of Erotes on one end, holding a torch and a poppy flower. Erotes symbolized various things, including love and death. The decoration style suggested that the monument was from the high imperial era of ancient Rome, but at this point we still don't have an exact date range. At least it hasn't been released to the public yet. Again, this is still a very new find, but this wasn't all they found either. There was also a stone urn, a limestone carving depicting a man's face, and a number of bricks and tile pieces. Next on the list is what I'm just going to call the treasure trove. Now, this news just came out last week at the time of recording this video. Archaeologists in Panama unearthed an ancient burial site filled with treasures at El Caño Archaeological Park. The burial dates back between 750 AD and 800 AD and looks like it must have belonged to an elite lord. The burial revealed the remains of a high-status man who was likely between 30 and 40 when he died. Aside from bones, though, there was a whole bunch of treasure. Breastplates, belts adorned with gold, beads, intricate bracelets, earrings. There were even a pair of crocodile-shaped earrings, which is pretty cool. They also found gold-covered sperm whale teeth earrings. How extravagant is that? Not only do I have a necklace with whale teeth, but I gotta get them coated in gold too. That's not even all they found. They also uncovered bracelets and skirts made from dog teeth, bone flutes, and a bunch of pottery pieces. And on top of all the beautiful stuff this guy was buried with, he was also accompanied by a number of people who were sacrificed. He was incredibly rich, so he was just too above going into the afterlife alone. Next on the list, we have a horrifying pit of severed hands. Apparently severed hands were a big deal in ancient Egypt. Archaeologists made a pretty gruesome discovery when they came across pits filled with severed human hands. They were found during excavations of a palace near the ancient city of Avaris. These pits contained hundreds of severed hands, neatly stacked together, and the largest pit was right in front of the throne room. Researchers believe that these hands were severed from enemies captured in battles or raids. It's not entirely clear why these hands were collected and stored, but there have been images found of soldiers trading severed hands for gold, so some speculate that they might have been offerings to the gods or simply just trophies of victory. Next up, we have the Herxheim archaeological site. So back in 1996, during routine excavations, archaeologists came across this pit filled with human remains. Now, that's gotta be alarming even for an archaeologist. I can't imagine you ever get bored with finding human remains, but what made this find even creepier was how these folks had died. They weren't just the remnants of ordinary burials, there were signs that these people had been deliberately and systematically consumed by other humans. The bones all showed signs of butchering. Cut marks indicated careful dismemberment. It looked like these individuals were not just victims of violence, but also of ritualistic consumption. The pit contained the bones of over 500 people, dating back to the Neolithic period. Some suggest these folks were eaten as part of some sort of religious ritual, but other researchers think this may have been more a case of desperation. Possibly there could have been a famine. Next up, we have Neanderthal markings. So the recent discovery of ancient cave markings thought to be made by Neanderthals is obviously pretty exciting. The markings were found on the walls of a cave in central France and are believed to be over 57,000 years old, which would make them the oldest of their kind. The cave was first stumbled upon in 1846 during some quarrying work. It wasn't until 1912 that the archaeological finds started cropping up though, with the discovery of animal bones and tools that had likely belonged to Neanderthals. The cave seemed to have been sealed off from the outside world around 57,000 years ago, which is a hefty chunk of time before modern humans even set foot in the region around 42,000 years ago. So it's a solid bet that the finger marks on the walls were the handiwork of Neanderthals. So what are these markings exactly? They're a series of wavy lines, dots, and faint striations, and it's believed that Neanderthals created these engravings by sweeping and pressing their fingers across a thin line of film on the limestone walls. The height of the markings suggests they were made by taller beings, teenagers or adults, but were they decorative, ritualistic, were they even made intentionally? They're still not sure. Now we head back to Egypt with the discovery of an ancient Roman city in Luxor. The news about this incredible find was announced back in January of 2023. Egyptian archaeologists found a very well-preserved Roman city in Luxor, dating back to the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE. It's now been described as the oldest and most important city found on the eastern bank of Luxor, by Mustafa Waziri, head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. The archaeological team unearthed a whole whackload of these ancient structures, including residential buildings, offering insights into how people lived during that time. There were also the discovery of 2 pigeon towers used for housing carrier birds, meaning this city was very likely involved in communication networks at the time. There were also metal workshops found in the city that contained whole collections of artifacts of their own, pots, tools, and a collection of bronze and copper Roman coins. Next up, we have the 4,500-year-old tomb. This is another recent 2024 archaeological discovery. I really tried to fill this list up with new stuff. So this discovery was made about 20 miles south of Cairo. Egyptian and Japanese archaeologists stumbled on an ancient Egyptian tomb carved into rock over 4,000 years ago. I always say stumbled on, like these archaeologists are just kind of walking around and they're like, oh, it's an ancient tomb. Obviously, there's more that goes into it than that. It's just the easiest way for my brain to wrap my head around it. They stumbled on it. So anyway, the tomb was carved into rock over 4,000 years ago, dated back between 2649 and 2150 BC. The tomb contained a whole bunch of graves and artifacts from different historical periods. During their excavation, the team unearthed a bunch of treasures. There were human remains buried alongside a vividly colored mask, a burial site from the 2nd dynasty, and an incredibly well-preserved alabaster vessel from the 18th dynasty. In the tomb, there were also 2 terracotta statues depicting the ancient Egyptian goddess Isis and Harpocrates, along with a stela with a man's name encrypted on it, a man named Heroides. I think that's how you pronounce it. You've all heard of the Moai statues on Easter Island before, I know, but just last year, archaeologists found a new one. This new statue adds to the nearly 1,000 that have already been found on the island. This latest statue was uncovered in a dry lake bed, the only one to be found in that location. So far, anyway. The discovery was made by the organization that oversees the island's national park. Terry Hunt, a professor of archaeology at the University of Arizona, was incredibly excited about the find and described how important it is that these statues be retrieved, helping to preserve the history of the Rapa Nui people. So with how much attention and research has gone into the Easter Island statues, why was it that this one was just discovered now? Well, they're saying it's probably because of changes in the area's climate, resulting in the drying out of the lake that was surrounding the sculpture, and they're thinking it probably won't be the last one to turn up. Next, we have another exciting discovery. News about this came out just recently as well. A ton of cool artifacts were found in Brazil. And this one's pretty cool because this stuff was discovered completely by accident. This really was like stumbling on it. So there was a routine construction project going on at an apartment complex, but then construction workers came across a pretty alarming find, human bones, and then more and more stuff started turning up. There were also pottery shards, so these bones weren't recent. Turns out all this stuff belonged to an ancient civilization dating back as far as 9,000 years ago. During excavations, they found thousands of artifacts, and not only that, but these artifacts could possibly reshape the understanding of human settlement in Brazil. The site known as Rosanne's Farm was full of stone tools, ceramic fragments, decorated shells, and bones, which was excavated over the course of 4 years of intense digging. And in total, 43 human skeletons and more than 100,000 artifacts were uncovered. Archaeologists unearthed remnants of a group that existed around 8,000 to 9,000 years ago, meaning that humans moved into the region much earlier than previously believed. The leader of the excavation stated the discovery could, quote, completely change the history of not just the region, but all of Brazil. End quote. This finding may totally change the way we look at the timing and the roots of human migration into the Americas from Asia, which is pretty cool. And we're finishing off the list with the finding of a mysterious Anglo-Saxon artifact, again just in January of this year, in Langham, England. A treasure hunter made a pretty cool discovery with a metal detector. It was a small artifact made of gilded silver. It was just under an inch in diameter and 0.3 inches in height. Apparently it dates back to the 8th century. It also has an image of an animal engraved on top, along with Celtic knot-like patterns. Not entirely clear what the object is. The Portable Antiquities Scheme, who are responsible for recording finds like this, noted the thing is similar to other items discovered in the same time period, but this one stands out because of its size and its design. Historian Helen Giek speculated that the spiral pattern on the artifact looked a lot like Celtic designs, and that the animal depicted could be a horse. Definitely what it looks like to me as well. She also praised the craftsmanship, noting that it was created by someone with a keen eye for beauty. And again, I agree, that thing, it looks fantastic.
Starting off this list at our number 10 spot, we have the crystal skulls. The ancient crystal skulls found in Mexico and Central America are a group of pre-Columbian artifacts that are believed to be over 1,000 years old. These skulls are made out of clear or milky quartz and are intricately carved to resemble human skulls. Despite being discovered in the 19th and 20th centuries, their true origin and purpose remains a mystery. According to legend, the crystal skulls were created by the Maya or the Aztecs and are said to possess magical powers that can heal or grant spiritual enlightenment to those who come in contact with them. Some people believe that the crystal skulls are extraterrestrial in origin and that they hold the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. Many theories have been put forth over the years about the purpose and significance of the crystal skulls. Some researchers believe that they were used for religious or ceremonial purposes, while others speculate that they may have been used for divination, or even as tools for communication with otherworldly beings. Despite decades of research and study, the true origins and purpose of the crystal skulls remain shrouded in mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have Linear A. Linear A is an undeciphered script used by the Minoan civilization between 1800 and 1450 BCE. The script was first discovered in 1900 by British archaeologist Arthur Evans and was used to write the Minoan language, which is also still largely unknown. Linear A is composed of over 100 different signs, including pictograms and ideograms, but it is believed to be a syllabic script, meaning that each sign represents a syllable or sound. Despite numerous attempts by researchers to decipher the script, its meaning and purpose remains a mystery. The mystery surrounding Linear A is compounded by the fact that the Minoan civilization itself is shrouded in mystery, with little known about its social structure, economy, or religious practices. The decipherment of Linear A could potentially shed light on these enigmatic aspects of Minoan culture, but for now the script remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Tartaria Tablets. These are a set of 3 clay tablets discovered in 1961 in Romania, dating back to the Neolithic era around 5300 BCE. The tablets contain a series of symbols that are thought to be the oldest form of writing in Europe. While there is still much debate about the meaning of the symbols and whether they constitute as a true writing system, many researchers believe that they represent a form of proto-writing or proto-cuneiform. The tablets have caused controversy in the archaeological community, with some experts questioning their authenticity and others arguing that they represent a significant discovery that could change our understanding of early human communication. Despite their importance, the Tartaria tablets remain largely shrouded in mystery, and their true meaning and purpose may never be fully understood. In our number 7 spot today, we have the stone spheres from Costa Rica. These ancient stone balls found in Costa Rica are a collection of nearly perfect spherical stones ranging in size from a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter. These stone balls were created by the Dequis culture between 700 and 1530 CE, and they were discovered in southern Costa Rica in the 1930s. They have since become an archaeological mystery, with many unanswered questions about their origins, purpose, or how they were made. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding the stone balls is how they were created. The spheres are made of granite and other hard stones, and they were perfectly shaped without the use of any modern tools or technology. Some have suggested that they were made using some sort of unknown technique, or that they were created with the help of extraterrestrial technology. Another mystery surrounding the stone balls is their purpose. Some believe that they were used as part of a game, while others argue that they had a more practical use, such as astronomical observations or as a status symbol. However, no definitive answers have ever been found. The stone balls have also raised questions about the Daquis culture itself. Despite their impressive creations, very little is known about the people and their language and written records, which have not survived. This lack of knowledge has made it difficult to fully understand the significance of the stone balls and their role in the culture. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Piri-Reis map. The Piri-Reis map is a world map created by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri-Reis in 1513. The map is notable for its accurate representation of South America and Antarctica, which were not officially discovered until centuries later. Of course, this means that what has puzzled researchers is the source of his knowledge. One theory is that Piri may have had access to ancient maps that are no longer in existence, such as the Library of Alexandria, which was destroyed in a fire in the 1st century BCE. Others speculate that he may have had contact with extraterrestrial beings who provided him with advanced knowledge of geography and cartography. What makes the Piri-Reis map even more mysterious is the presence of features that are not visible in modern maps. For example, the map includes a land bridge between South America and Antarctica, which has been confirmed by modern satellite imagery. However, this land bridge was only discovered by modern science in the 20th century. Another mystery surrounding the Piri-Reis map is the presence of a series of markings and symbols that appear to depict astronomical and astrological data. Some researchers believe that these symbols may have been used for navigation or even to track the movement of the stars. Despite decades of research and study, the true source of Piri-Reis's knowledge and the purpose of the markings on the map remain a mystery, making it one of the most enigmatic ancient artifacts to this day. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is an ancient Greek artifact discovered in 1901 by a group of sponge divers off of the coast of the island of Antikythera. The device, which is believed to date back to the 2nd or 1st century BCE, is a very complex mechanism made up of gears and cogs, and it is thought to have been used to predict astronomical events and the cycles of the solar and lunar calendars. What makes this mechanism so mysterious is its advanced technology and the fact that nothing else like it has been discovered from the same time period. The device is believed to have been incredibly sophisticated for its time, and its level of complexity was not achieved again until the development of similar technology during the Renaissance, over 1,000 years later. The mechanism is also mysterious because its purpose and origin are still not fully understood. Despite extensive research and analysis, there is still much that remains unknown about the device, including who built it and how it was used. The Antikythera mechanism remains a fascinating artifact, and it continues to capture the imagination of scientists, historians, and just the general public. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Voynich manuscript. The Voynich manuscript is a very mysterious book that dates back to the 15th century, written in an unknown script and illustrated with strange drawings of plants, animals, and astrological symbols. The manuscript is named after Wilfrid Voynich, a rare book dealer who acquired the book in 1912. What makes the Voynich manuscript so mysterious is the fact that no one has been able to decipher its contents or identify the language it is written in. The strange drawings and symbols have baffled scholars for centuries, and many theories have been proposed as to its purpose and origin. Some believe that the manuscript is a secret code or cipher, while others speculate that it is a lost alchemaic text or an early form of cryptography. Despite extensive efforts to decipher the manuscript, its secrets remain unsolved, and it continues to be a source of fascination and speculation for scholars and enthusiasts alike. The Voynich manuscript is a testament to the enduring power of mystery and intrigue, and it serves as a reminder of the vastness and complexity of human knowledge and understanding. Maybe this book that we have is holding on to some of the most important secrets that have just been lost to time. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Works of Old Men. The Works of Old Men are structures that were first observed from the air by a British pilot in 1927, and they are located near the Azraq Oasis in Jordan. There are hundreds of these wheel-like structures that are over 80 feet wide, some even as large as 200 feet. These huge structures have been dated back so far that they might just be the oldest man-made creations that we have ever found. While this is all amazing, we have absolutely no idea what what they are or why they were created. The theories range from things like sun tracking to ceremonies to some sort of spiritual relevance, but we really just aren't sure. While things like this are incredible finds, and it's amazing that some of the first man-made things still exist on our Earth, it is insane how we have no idea what they are or how to use them, and unfortunately, especially because of the fact that it's been thousands and thousands of years, it's most likely that the mysteries surrounding them are totally lost with the past. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Joppa stones. These stones were found by archaeologists in China. There were hundreds of discs made of stone that were found under a ton of dust inside of a cave. The notable thing about these discs is that they resemble phonography records with a hole in the center that leads into a spiral groove. These stones are at least 10,000 years old, and the groove in them is made up of super small hieroglyphics. Here's the kicker though, these hieroglyphics were deciphered and found to have stories of spaceships crashing into mountains. These spaceships were apparently being flown by what was called Droppa. After this discovery, the researcher who found it was ridiculed as people believed it was ridiculous, but years later some Russian researchers asked for a few of the stones to examine. Upon the Russian examination, they found some sort of extraordinary vibration or hum coming from the stones. After this, research on the stones either stopped or has just been hidden from the public. Finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Indus Valley Script. This is an ancient writing system that was used by the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the earliest known civilizations in the world. The script is believed to have been in use from sometime around 2600 to 1900 BCE, and it is one of the few ancient scripts that has yet to be deciphered. The Indus Valley Script consists of over 400 different symbols, which have been found on seals, pottery, and other artifacts from the civilization. Despite numerous attempts to decipher the script, researchers have been unable to identify the language or meaning behind the symbols. The mysterious nature of the Indus Valley Script has led to much speculation about the civilization that created it. Some researchers believe that the symbols may have been used for religious or ritual purposes, while others suggest that they may have been used for trade or administration. Regardless of their purpose, the symbols remain a fascinating mystery of the ancient world, and their true meaning may never be fully understood.